Hey guys, it's time for another Throwback Thursday video, and I've dipped into the vault, not too far back into the back of the vault, to bring you a little look at a couple of sticks from what is really a major sports brand. So we're going to be looking at Reebok sticks. So I've got here a couple of Reebok sticks. I don't have a lot of Reebok sticks in my collection, to be honest. I've only got the 10K and the 11K. So there was also a 3K, which was like their entrance level stick. There was the 6K and the 9K. Reebok were one of the main sponsors for a long time for the NNL. And a lot of people used Reebok equipment. From what I remember, the gloves are pretty good. They did a good glove. Again, I think there was the 3K, there might have been a 6K, sure there was a 9K, there was a 10K, was it a 10.5K, and I don't know, but they had this thing about a K, but they made some good stuff, they made some pretty cool handles, they did quite a lot of hydrographics, which is kind of, you see here on this head, which gave some of the heads like a really cool, look to them. They look pretty neat. These ones are a little bit unusual. I don't know why Reebok didn't survive, really. I mean, it's a flooded market, let's face it now. Everybody is producing lacrosse heads, everyone's producing handles. There seems to be gloves popping up from, certainly from smaller brands, and what I can only describe as, what's the best way? Billy No Brand. There's a couple of bizarre, glove, offerings on the market now, which seems to be appearing. But let's have a look at the heads here from the vault. So we got the 10K, which, do you know what? This has strung up surprisingly well. I'd use this stick. I mean, I really would. At the time when this came out, I remember looking at this and just thinking, this is a weird head. You can see there against my t-shirt. It's got these whopping big spaces, these big cutouts. Now, whether that was to make it kind of aerodynamic or to cut weight, but I think a lot of people looked at that and just thought, nah, I'm not about this. It's just kind of like this huge open space. But, the head is like, it's fairly strong for a head of its time, I'd say. And was that kind of little, what do you think? Oh, did I just crack it? But it's strung up remarkably well. It really has. Because you string some vintage heads up and you kind of like, it's an okay pocket for a head of its time with like no stringing holes, and kind of, you're limited on what you can do with some heads. You've got to get a little bit creative. But, I think all in all, I really like this. I've actually gone through the same hole here. You can see that. But it's actually produced a really nice pocket. Really impressed with that. But, I had quite a kind of long throat on it, and kind of, I don't know. It's not an ugly head, is it? I mean, the holes here are a little off-putting. But Reebok kind of stuck around for a few years and then just disappeared. No idea why they didn't survive. But said, they were a pretty, big deal at the time. Nearly everybody in the NNL were using Reebok equipment back when Reebok was a thing. And here we've got a head which I'm not sure that the 11K actually hit the market. You see there the ball's up 11K. Came in white and black. I've got a white and a black one, both unused. I'm not so impressed with this head. The 10K strung up really well, and it's not a bad stick other than the weird holes at the top. This one, I can make the sidewalls touch. It is like a rubber band. It's sprung straight back. So I don't really know what this is about, the 11K, why it's so squishy. Because it is, look at that. I can bend the scoop back. Can you imagine picking up a ground ball? It's just, but again, it's strung up quite well. You know, pocket looks decent, you know. I mean, it looks like it would be an okay head if it wasn't made of like jelly or jello if you're watching from the States. I think what you call jelly, we call jam, which is like you might spread on toast or having in a cake. And then what would yeah, so jello, we don't call anything jello. Jello is just jello to an American. But the 11K, I mean, they had pretty cool ball stops. I'm going to say this at the time. I mean, it sounds kind of goofy, but, you know, they had this kind of like rubbery ball stop. And again, on the 10K, you know. But I'm just kind of surprised that none of the big brands have stuck around really in lacrosse. I mean, obviously Nike is still there, but, you know, Nike is basically SDX equipment. You know, Reebok was successful. Can we say successful? I feel like if they were successful, they'd still be here. But, you know, they produce some good equipment. I remember going to a LaxCon, trying to think when this was. I want to say 2010. And, you know, there was a pretty impressive Reebok booth there with loads of cool stuff, loads of cool handles, all this kind of hydro dip head, and there was all kind of like funky colours and patterns on heads and some, you know, some cool looking handles. There was actually a handle that came that kind of matched this, that had these huge holes throughout the handle. I think that was called the 10K as well. But it's, you know, they must have been around for, yeah, a few years. I want to say a few years. I mean, I remember somebody selling Reebok at the World Games in Manchester. But then, you know, might have lasted a couple of years. What? It might have had like maybe 3 or 4 year period where Reebok was big. And as I said, you know, Nike is there. You know, Nike's there. Adidas came, Adidas went, Adidas came back, and Adidas went again. Yeah, it's not a mainstream enough sport, is it, for some of these brands to kind of go, you know, oh, we'll buy into lacrosse and kind of make all this lacrosse equipment, and it just doesn't work out. I mean, be interesting to see, you know, is Nike always going to be around? Who knows? You know, will Nike always be a lacrosse brand? I mean, some of the Nike stuff you see in the market now is actually pretty good. You know, the Lakota was a great head, and you know, that whole Lakota line. Obviously now we've got the L3, really, really popular head. And some of the Nike gloves are really impressive. Nike Vapor Premiers, amazing glove, just so expensive. But you know, I think Reebok were obviously doing something right to a point. Where it went wrong, no idea. You know, I think sometimes when the big guys get involved, maybe it comes like the decision of a bean counter. So I'll say bean count, like an accountant, basically goes, are we making enough money? And I just suspect that Reebok looked at it and went, you know what? We're not making enough money from this sport, and just ditched it. So, you know, will we see big brands come back into lacrosse? Don't know. It might all change. If lacrosse takes off at the Olympics, then perhaps it could be that, you know, some of the big sporting brands come back and they re-look at lacrosse and go, oh, maybe we should get involved in this. It might just be that if it does take off at the Olympics, you know, all the small lacrosse brands explode and mushroom, and some of the, you know, the big brands get even bigger. And it could be that, you know, lacrosse gets to the Olympics and people just go, oh, that was interesting, but it doesn't explode. Diverting slightly about Olympic lacrosse, but, you know, if Olympic lacrosse does take off and all these people look at the sport and go, wow, I want to play lacrosse, I'm not sure that we're ready for that, because the infrastructure just isn't there. So, you know, it's unfortunate. I think we've got to focus on getting it, you know, as a recognised sport in schools, you know, before we kind of get too carried away with the Olympics because, I don't know. I hope I'm wrong. You know, I do hope I'm wrong, but I just can't see it exploding at this point. But anyway, Reebok 10K, 11K, not bad looking heads, because I don't think it hit the market, and you can probably see why. You know, this kind of squishy, I mean, I can twist that, that's horrible. But saying that, you know, it kind of springs back to shape. Interesting to kind of find out what plastic this was, but it's a very thin head, actually. Very, very thin plastic. So you can kind of see why it's so malleable. But Reebok Lacrosse, they came and they disappeared.